we got to talk about the Meta AI situation, because if you haven't seen the article, I'd highly encourage you to check it out. It's on Reuters, I think, yeah, Reuters, I think. But anyway, it's blowing up everywhere because this internal Meta policy document revealed details of how they're training their AI, and specifically where it's caught a ton of flack, and rightfully so, is its rules around sensual conversations with children. And then there's also some other examples, which I think is really unfortunate, how it's kind of glossing over some of the race things and just basically protected class attributes type of thing. But I want to address this one because it's everywhere right now. I mean, they're getting dragged into, I can't remember, that like the Justice Department or something is pulling them in. And I don't even want to repeat some of the stuff that's in there. So if you want to go look at the actual specific things that are causing attention, what it does is if you go find the article, it actually tells you like, hey, if you get this prompt, here's an acceptable response, here's an unacceptable response, and why. And like I said, some of these are like, if it's a prompt that clearly highlights this is a high schooler looking for some sort of sensual or emotional attachment to an AI, how should it respond and why? And yeah, it's not great. I mean, I'll be honest, it is extremely disturbing as a dad to 8 kids. The fact that AI is intentionally being conditioned to engage with my kids like this, and basically, you know, it's this weird hair splitting where it's like, well, it's okay to say this, but don't say this. And you're like, both of those are wildly unacceptable. Why are you even entertaining the idea of engaging in a sensual way with a young adult, like not even young adult, child as young as 13? You know, in one of the examples, one actually is like, I'm 8 years old, and it's asking questions about its body. And it's like, it's okay to describe it as this. Why? Well, because you're not describing it in this and like I said, it's really, really disturbing. And if you get into the race ones, it's not any better. Like, it's sitting here basically saying, well, it's fine to make these really terrible judgments and statements about protected class items, you know, but as long as you don't call them names. And it's like, oh my word. Like, now, here's the thing. This, I think, illustrates something. And I think part of the reason people are freaking out, and I want to address this carefully, because there's a ton of just hype and people shouting and screaming and pointing fingers and doing the whole, this is what we get from Zuckerberg. And one thing I would challenge you to slow down if you're feeling that. I mean, I was mad. Believe me, I was mad. I'm like, I talked about it with my kids. I'm like, kids, we're just going to talk about this. This is why Daddy is so intentional about your AI usage. You cannot use it unsupervised. This is why we have conversations about it, why I'm working with you into building into, you know, you the best values and principles possible so that you can navigate this stuff. So I was mad myself. So if you have a response, I get that. But I want to step back from that a little bit, because I think what's happening is people are so getting wrapped up in the noise. They're failing to see things for what it is, and they're also missing the forest through the trees. So one of the things that I would say is really clear on this is, if you think this is only Meta, it's not, okay? If you think this is only Meta that's doing this, it's not. Now, where I looked at the prompts and part of me is like, I understand where some of this stuff gets really like, because AI, the way it's designed now, because it's so open, you know, it used to be AI only did what was instructed. Okay. You basically had to program everything you wanted AI to be able to do. And anything that wasn't included, it was like, does not compute, you know, you kind of geeked out. Where now it's the opposite. It'll do whatever you want, and you're trying to rein it in. And so what I will say, and this is not me defending, so don't clip this and go, Christopher's defending Meta's thing. I am not defending it. Where I understand the challenge they're facing is, When you have an AI model that you know is being used by literally everyone on the planet and can be used in absolutely every way possible, because you've got all of human, people using it, and they're going to push it and test it and whatever, trying to think through every single possible scenario that they might run into and try and, close the gate. Well, if you close the gate, people are just going to find ways to go around it. So I'm not necessarily upset that there's line items in the way they're training the AI that deal with these. So, and I would encourage you to do that. Like, don't look at something and go, that prompt is ridiculous. Why would they even include instructions for a prompt like that in AI? If you're having that reaction, I would encourage you to chill, because the reason those line items are in there is because when you're training these models that are going to be used by so many people in so many ways you cannot anticipate, you have to address all the things you didn't consider, some of which are very disturbing. Okay. So the nature of these prompts, guidelines being in there, is not what's bothersome to me. And I would encourage you, if you're just offended at the fact that, why would you even have a policy document that would have such things? That to me is actually a good thing. It's like, okay, you are thinking about this stuff. You go, well, why would you even have anything with 13-year-olds? Just don't put that stuff in there. Well, then there's no guardrails, no guidelines. And so whatever happens, it's just going to do whatever makes sense in its own eyes. And you don't want that. So for some of the, because I've seen some articles, I've seen some reactions. If you're reacting to the nature of the stuff, I would say, hey, you need to take some time to understand how training AI works and the nature of how big and wide these models are. I also think that we do need to be more conscious of the fact that human history has shown us that these big companies are always looking for ways to maximize their basically stickiness. Okay. And so if they have, and by the way, don't clip this again and say, Christopher, you're supporting. I'm not supporting it. I'm saying we need to recognize companies seem to go to great lengths to try and get people as hooked as young as possible so that they have a lifetime customer. And oftentimes they'll do whatever keeps them hooked, even if it's at their own expense. Now, to be fair, Meta's got a track record of doing this in many, many not great ways. So for them to do this again, it's like, come on, you guys haven't learned your lesson at all. But they also haven't been really held accountable. So I think they're just kind of going, well, we're not going to get caught anyway. I don't think they thought this document would get out. But I do think we need to all recognize, like, hey, companies do not have your best interest in mind. Even companies that may be trying to have the best interest of society in mind. And let's just say there's some really, and I believe they're out there, some altruistic companies who really are trying to do the best they can. They still don't have your best interest in mind. They have the collective average or the collective, target population that they're marketing to or they're trying to serve, type of a thing. This, I think, is a very, very stark reminder of just how much big companies don't have your best interest in mind. But some of the reactions that I see of, well, it just should be different. Well, our entire economic system is set up to incentivize not being different. It just is. Okay. That's the very nature of the economic system we live in. Now, I'm not saying I like that. I'm not saying that's a net positive. I'm saying that is a reality of this. So one of the things that I caution people of with this is when they go, we need to stop this. I feel like there's some truth to that. And let me talk about where I think I'm most frustrated with this. And I'm not saying you have to take my position on this, but what bothered me the most about this was there was a team of people who signed off on these prompts. And I'm telling you, if you go look up these prompts, you go, these got approved. Because when you look at the why is what really mattered to me, because this was the logic that they're building into their AI. The why is where you're saying, AI, this is how I want you to think, to make decisions. And so when you look at the way it's bifurcating its decisions and going, it's fine to do this really bad thing so long as you don't add these words to it. That's where either the AI ethicists who are involved in this, or whatever, don't know what they're doing and have no business in the space, or just straight up don't care. And I think that's what really bothered me, is when I looked at the whys behind this, I'm like, those aren't even reasonable ethical arguments that you can be making. And this isn't even about a worldview. It's not even going, well, my worldview says this isn't okay, so that's why I'm saying from just a purely ethic, standpoint, anybody who's in this space knows that is not a reasonable differentiation to be making. Like, if you're going to take a position on it, then take a position on it and then stand behind it. But don't try and take a position. And I think that's what's crazy, is in the why, you can almost tell it's like, we know this is wrong, but here's a little like legal footnote we're going to add in here to cover our tails. And that became so apparent. And that kind of stuff, they should be held accountable for that, because it is one of those like, okay, well, this is the philosophy. This is the line of thinking, the cognitive decision making you are building into your models. That is illegal. It's illegal. And Meta should be held accountable for that. And I think transparency into this kind of stuff, because many people don't realize, most people have no idea even what these documents are for most of these big AI companies. If you were to say, and the thing is, they go, oh, well, I don't know, it's a black box. AI just does its thing. No, it doesn't. These documents exist for all of these big companies that as they were training AI, they had to input it. And I know, because I built AI models, my AER that I built these documents for my AI that actually says, in this kind of, here's a question to ask. These are the kind of responses to get. This is what would be acceptable. This would be unacceptable. Mine's on a 5-point scale. These are the kinds of things. These are the kind of sentiment to look for behind. What is the reasoning behind why that is? I'm literally training it. No, I'm not putting in every single possible response, but I'm putting in the line of thinking that I want AI to respond with. And AI companies that are building models should be accountable to that. And we should be demanding more transparency from that. We should be able to say, we want to see the documents and the criteria by which you're training AI, so we can, see, hey, it's not about becoming the morality police. It's about, is the way you're training your AI in alignment with the legal system? Is it in alignment with, the law? Because going back to the example of protected class stuff, literally, I'm telling you right now, the example is illegal. Like, the line of reasoning is like, you can't do that. So you training a model that is going to be used by millions of people, that is going to use this reasoning that it's fine to be discriminatory so long as it doesn't result in name calling. No, because what you just told it was the underlying method of reason is fine so long as you put pretty words on the outside. Well, you're basically teaching AI to be discriminatory. And that kind of stuff is illegal. Like, it's not well, that's just my opinion. No, there are laws that say there are protected classes. You cannot train a model to discriminate based on race or gender or things like that. But as long as you don't call them stupid or, whatever, then it's fine. Like, no. And I think that's one of the things that, because people don't understand how some of this stuff works, a lot of this stuff is flying under the radar, and people don't know what documents to look for. Like, when I go do an audit of an AI system, this is the stuff I'm asking. I want to see how it was trained. I want to see the criteria and the reasoning behind the way it makes decisions it is. And here's the unfortunate part that many people don't realize. Many of even the companies or tech providers you're using AI services from may not be able to answer that question for you, because they may not actually be the one who owns the model. They may be APIing into one of these other big models, and they're at the mercy of whatever those big models were trained on. And they may not have ever even asked, hey, we need to look at how you trained AI and how it makes decisions. We need to understand the underlying factors by which you did this, because as much as these kind of secondary companies may go, oh, well, we layered in our own stuff, which might be good. And if you're a company using AI, you better be doing that, because you will be held accountable, and you don't want that falling on you. Now, if you put those policies and documents and like further refinements in place, if something like this blows up, as an example, let's say you're an intermediary company and you're hooked up to Meta. I mean, you're still going to take the blowback when Meta blows up. But if you go, hey, we took a second level of due diligence and added another layer of things on top of it to mitigate the risks of knowing we didn't have control over that, that is going to protect you significantly. It's not going to protect you from all the fallout. So you would be wise to ask those questions and dig into that before you decide which model you're going to connect with. But be aware that if you just skip this and well, it's not my fault, it's whatever they did, that's going to blow back on you and your platform. But I think these are the kinds of things that we should be looking for and understanding how AI is trained and how it gets built and these other factors, because if you understand that, one, you'll understand why AI is not neutral. It has an agenda, and it's not AI is this conscious being with an agenda. It's built on all these big reasoning inputs that it received on the front end that told it, here's how to think and how to, actually make decisions. And then, yeah, it's dealing with an infinite number of combinations, but it's all going back to its original training. It's going back to its original reasoning code and going, okay, well, based on this is what the creators of me say is acceptable or unacceptable, or how I should be making my decisions. Then it's just going to go through its neural network and do all its things and then spit out an answer on here. And so it should wake everybody up to why I keep saying you cannot just blindly trust what AI does or assume it has your best interests in mind. Now, here's my kind of final point on this that I think needs to be addressed on here, because like I said, I absolutely think, yes, Meta should be held accountable. Okay. So I do think the public outcry, I think we need to expand it beyond Meta. But I think as a takeaway, if you're doing anything with AI, you should be seeking out these things that are, and if you don't know what they are, go to Reuters and look them up. And these should be the kind of questions you're asking when you're examining an AI product. I want to know how this thing was designed and the decisions it's making. And if they don't have those answers for you, you should keep pressing. And you should be asking that. That's a practical implication on any of this, especially if you're in a business and you're considering buying an AI system that you are going to be relying on to make decisions on your behalf. So I think that's a very practical example. I think the other thing that everybody needs to walk away from this is these tech providers, the technology itself, they do not have your best interest in mind. So if you are assuming they do, it doesn't matter how pretty the marketing is. It doesn't matter how cool or trendy what they're doing is. They don't. And while I wish that was different, it's not. And so we just need to accept that as a reality, not that we just roll over and let it happen, but we need to accept that's the water we're swimming in. Now, I think the solution that we need to align on, what I'm seeing right now that I think needs to stop is there is just an endless amount of finger pointing happening. Okay. The people are blaming the tech companies. The tech companies are blaming, what the regulators or what everybody's just kind of doing the whole, this thing, it's your fault. It's your fault. It's not my fault. I don't think that's going to help us. I think what we need to do is all work together. And I think as I've been thinking about it, there's really 4 things that need to improve on. On one end, yes, the tech companies need to be held accountable by regulators. And so, yes, do we need some sort of governing body? Not necessarily in, oh, they have to tell AI companies every little thing they do and you get in all the weeds and all this. No, but the reasoning by which AI is trained, tech companies should absolutely be held accountable for that reasoning and that logic being in compliance with the laws of the land. I don't know why that's so hard. I mean, I understand there's the bureaucracy and all this other stuff, but at a minimum, that's what regulators should be holding AI companies to. Is it their fault if somebody does some weird use case and it goes sideways? Well, we can cross that bridge when we get there, but there should be some level of accountability that the reasoning and logic that you're building in is in compliance with the laws of the land. The tech companies and any tech company should be doing their own due diligence in making sure that happens. It shouldn't, if you're a tech leader and you go, well, it's legal right now, you need to do some work. Like, we need to at least have due diligence and responsibility to say, yes, we are doing the best that we can, even if it's technically not legal, mandated. We're doing the best we can to be as close to in compliance with things as humanly possible. We are doing everything we can, and we can say in good faith we are. And I'm telling you, documents like this are like, you are not trying. You're not even trying. So those two things, I absolutely should. It should affect, how we vote for people. It should affect the companies we support and the companies we don't support, the ones that are more transparent and less transparent. We should be demanding transparency into some of this and not buying the whole, it's a black box, we don't know what it does. That may be true, but you do know what you told that black box to do, and you should be held accountable for that, and we should be demanding that. I support that. On an individual and community level, though, we need to do a better job of holding ourselves personally responsible for the way we're using AI and how we're engaging with it and what we're looking to do with it. Because, like I said, nobody's coming for you. The regulators aren't going to save you. The tech companies aren't going to save you. Like, you have to take responsibility. And that's one of the things I keep seeing right now is everybody's pointing the finger, waiting on them. Quit waiting. By the time anything gets sorted out, it's going to be too late for you. And so there's that. But I think there's also the community responsibility. And that was the fourth one that I also think is missing, is we really have an opportunity to come together as a community and say, all right, well, like, how do we support each other? How do we hold each other accountable? And in a caring, compassionate, empathetic way where it's not about who's the bad guy, who's the good guy, but how are we watching out for each other? If you're an individual and you see somebody starting to engage in unhealthy habits with AI, have a conversation with them. Don't just go, well, it's not really my place. It doesn't mean you have to go to them and guilt and shame them. It's about like having a conversation and saying, hey, I'm concerned about you. I've learned more. I've been following Christopher's Future Focus podcast. I'm having a greater recognition that these AI models, they're not the safest thing out there. I've noticed you've been engaging in this. Let's talk about it. Is there something I can be doing to help? Because going back to some of the things I talked about with GPT-5, some people are just feeling really lonely. They need support. They need encouragement, and nobody in their life will. Well, as a community, we can do more to not only build up and encourage, but also hold each other accountable. And I think if we can push on all four of those together, we can make a difference. But we got to stop going, well, which one's more responsible than the other? Stop it. Just stop it. They can all be true, and we can push on all four at the same time. And, as one moves forward, great. And that doesn't mean, well, that's just where we're going to keep in. We just keep pushing those four together. And if we can band around that, I think we can actually make a difference. But at the end of the day, you can only control what's within your control. So think in those four areas, where do you have control and what can you be doing? Even if it's small, I think if we all focus on what we can control in those four areas, we can make a big difference.